Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. We're talking about ICE, Operation Midway Blitz. I think that in Chicago, we might have taken that victory lap just a little too soon. We said, okay, no federalized police, no National Guard, no FBI on the ground, and that is great. It's just they had ICE waiting just outside of the city. And September 8th, they have deployed them everywhere. They're leaving little children in cars, they're leaving them parentless. And they're taking people only heaven knows where. Because let's be clear, the only countries that the administration with whom they're negotiating to receive these migrants are African countries and South American countries, because the so-called Hispanic people are really indigenous people who speak Spanish. They're about as Spanish as I am English. I speak English because that's the language of my conqueror, but I'm not English, and they're not Spanish. They're actually indigenous people. And many of them are very, very fair because they've been very, very mixed with the European colonizers. I think we know something about that. I'm not mad at anybody because guess what? All the things that I am got me here. That having been said, I have to be clear on what the backstory is. And we need to really look at what's happening to people because now Pastor Hatch, New Mount Pilgrim Missionary Baptist Church, it is beginning to get, uh, let's say, very, very contentious at these ICE detention centers here in Chicago and just outside of Chicago. Bordering on, they're getting violent. Renee Criswell, Attorney Daryl Jones, Chairman of the Transformative Justice Coalition. I'm going to start with you, Attorney Daryl Jones, as I do, to find out just where we are and what all of this means. Everyone, I want you to meet me at Blue Sky, santitajackson.bsky. And of course, that is .social, santitajackson.bsky.social. And then I am on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please meet me there. Many of you are already there. Like and share, like and share. Santita Jackson and Friends on Facebook. Santita Jackson IG. That's right, on Instagram. And I just really want you all to get involved and let's have these conversations and pass them along, pass them along, pass them along, because we've got a lot going on here. And so I'm so glad to have this panel with us because we need to know really how we're supposed to handle this moment because what's really happened here, Attorney Jones, is we have seen ICE deployed in a mighty way in Chicago. And I think it's paving the way for ICE to be deployed in this way all over the country. And what does this mean? So what is going on? This Operation Midway Blitz, of course, Chicago being the great Midway in the Midwest. In California, they've just established a law that ICE cannot be masked, but they're still masked here. Help me to understand the point of masking these agents. I mean, I've heard that they want to be protected, but see, wait a minute, I don't know who you are. When the police come to us, I know who they are. There's a badge, there's a number, there's a name. ICE, this is like, it's feeling like the secret police. Mm-hmm. Attorney Daryl Jones.
Yes, Santita. Well, hello, and you're not far off at all with regards to the ICE acting as a secret police. One of the scarier things as we're dealing with ICE, and when we're talking about Operation Midway Blitz, what we're talking about there is this infusion of ICE agents that are going to be coming into Chicago and the surrounding areas in Illinois with the intention and the purpose of going after folks that they believe are illegally in the United States. And right now, there have been greater than 200 ICE agents now that have been deployed into Chicago and the surrounding area with the purpose of trying to, find folks that they're saying are illegally within within the state of Illinois and the United States. Where it becomes very, very complicated is on a number of levels, right? One thing is that you're not having the cooperation between the state and local governments along with the federal government from ICE. And the pushback, obviously, from the state and local governments is that they want to protect their citizens. They don't believe in the actions that ICE are taking and going after these folks that are part of the community and by most records are folks that have not been convicted of committing any crimes. So there's not they're believe that folks should be provided due process, and they're not going to get the due process with the way that the ICE is operating. So what's happening in Chicago, what's happening in some of the areas is that you have ICE that's coming in and they're gathering up these people. They're coming out of vans or wherever to get these people and to detain them. And a lot of times they may leave if the person's driving in the car and they have their children in the car. They may take the person and leave the children. And the question is, what happens to the children? And so there are all kinds of Office of Refugee Resettlement and things like that that they can be taken to. But all of this is stuff that is happening right now, where it becomes, I think, really horrible or questionable, or on the legal side of it, is this. Chicago and is the test case for what the administration is going to be able to do with the use of their private police that they're calling ICE, Immigration Customs and Enforcement Officers. That's really what it is. We know that they've already funneled somewhat $45 billion to set up some extra facilities to detain some of the immigrants that they're confronting. We know that through that big, beautiful bill that you're talking about, that they pushed to ICE $175 billion to hire more people and to get out in this enforcement. So what the administration and the federal government has done is really has completely weaponized this thing to go after people. Now, I want to add that to one other thing that's happening, Santita. There's a case that came out last Monday or Tuesday, I can't remember which day, called the Perdermo case. The Perdermo case focused on California, and it was done as part of the shadow docket from the U.S. Supreme Court. But it's the holding of the Perdermo case that is going to be important across the country, particularly in Chicago, particularly in California. Perdermo comes out of California, out of Los Angeles, and in essence, what it says is that if a person meets four factors, right, that they look, in this particular case in Perdermo, that they look Latino, that they speak with an accent, that they're located in a Latino neighborhood, or if they're in an area, a working area, or in a business, construction, landscaping, type of business, that the ICE agents do not need any reason to approach, detain, and question those individuals, thus making them really second-class citizens. That ordinarily, and for an officer to approach, there would have to be some type of reasonable and articulable suspicion that goes by the wayside with this. And so, as a result of that, the ICE officers will be able to simply jump out and detain anyone that they think is Latino, anyone that they assume because you're Latino, you're illegally in the country, and then demand paperwork and demand your status and all this other stuff that they can do. This is what this is making the way forward. So what's happening in Chicago right now with this, with the Midway blitz and the number of ICE agents that's coming in there, it's going to be the test case. Mayor Brandon Johnson has taken the stance of saying to the Chicago Police Department, don't cooperate, right? And don't come in there and help them out with what they're doing. And you have the governor also that's saying no, state police isn't getting involved. They're not going to help. This is the stand-up. This is going to be the example of whether or not the administration can force their hand in cities and states across the country. Chicago is the test case. DC is not the test case because DC is not a state. So Chicago becomes the test case because Illinois is the state. That is now the test case. And I don't know what the result is going to be, but I will tell you this, that it is, it is certainly putting fear into our Latino brothers and sisters across the country, real fear. And rest assured that it's not going to stop with the Latino community. It's going to expand to other communities with this broad base of power that is now out there and is now being unveiled and is going to be weaponized against communities of color, Santita.
Well, Attorney Jones, the West Side Justice Center, which I know that this is a center with which you're familiar, Pastor Hatch, 20% of these immigrants in Chicago are Black. They're African descendant. So it's already hitting our community. I mean, the Black community, it's hitting everybody. Now, I don't know if it's hitting the Ukrainians here, right? You have one or two examples. But really, it's hitting Black and brown people. And as we go around, I want to talk about what our rights are. And I mean, Pastor Hatch, what was unsettling was watching the video images of the people really trying to be human shields at the detention centers. And they're also trying to get in and see. I had Congresswoman Robin Kelly, my congresswoman from the 2nd Congressional District here in the state of Illinois. And Broadview is in her district. So she left the floor, she said on Friday, and came right here because they had that really big conflagration out there. She can't get in, Pastor Hatch. This is the congressman, the federal representative, the elected federal representative for that district. They will not let her in. Is this something that you're hearing, or what does the community feel like? Are you hearing this from people? Because I know with people who work in my building, they're frightened to death. More and more people, I have friends in Washington who are saying it's getting harder and harder to go to restaurants because people are not showing up to work. Mm-hmm. Not that they don't want to work, they need to work, but they're afraid of a sweep. Pastor Hatch, help me with this. What are you seeing?
Well, I think all of us have seen the, at least the footage of folks being absolutely manhandled and cavalierly tossed out of the way of vehicles coming in and out of the ICE detaining facilities. I think what has been most disturbing to me is to read the threads, to see the reaction. Mm-hmm. And people are literally cheering on the ICE agents. There's a celebration of cruelty that I just have never really seen in the culture. There's a toxicity. There's a celebration of cruelty and inhumaneness. It really is a culture ripe, a political climate ripe for further descent into fascism. And of course, has been already stated, the ICE agents are the president's personal police force, meaning he not only controls a military now, but he controls a police force domestically. Mm-hmm. And I think, just listen to the language. The Mayor Johnson says, the police can't cooperate with ICE. You know what he did not say? He didn't say they could intervene. You see, that part. And so this is going to be something that's going to be very interesting. And I mean, I know you're going to talk a little bit about what was happening at the Charlie Kirk memorial service, but it was absolutely effective propaganda. I think the president is emboldened. He mentioned Chicago twice in his speech, that he is coming here. Yeah. And I think that he feels emboldened. And he, in fact, said he promised Charlie Kirk that he would come and clean up Chicago.
Because he's from here.
Because he's from here. He's homegrown.
Yeah.
And so, there was a lot of moving parts in that. But just on your point, this is moving headlong. And I mean, it's great to talk about the nuances of law and the courts. I think everybody's finding out The courts don't control armies. Courts do not have enforcement power for their rulings. I think that the administration is very clear on that fact of the matter. And I think that, we're just moving into more and more hazards of any that we no longer have any semblance of rule of law. And it's gonna get worse. I gotta just tell you, from what I understand about human nature.
Mm. Hmm. Renee Criswell, you have been a teacher. I'm understanding that a lot of parents are keeping their children home from school. Um, Talk to me. What does this do to a community when these sweeps are happening?
Well, it makes people fearful that they might get caught up in what's going on. I drive every day. I drive from North Lawndale to Inglewood. Um,
Mm.
on 24th and Albany, one of the streets I go down, ICE agents arrested somebody the other day. I go past the Home Depot on Western. They went over there and ICE agents arrested people. Um, People have to be afraid, especially if they're immigrants, because it doesn't matter if you're here legally or illegally, everybody's a possible target. I mean, I live on a block that now has many Hispanic families. They can come into anyone's house and say
Mhm.
that they're searching for illegal immigrants. No due process whatsoever. They can just pick you up just because they want to pick you up, and you have very little protection. I'm glad that Governor Newsom passed a law saying that they can't wear masks, but
Mhm.
who's going to enforce that law? Because we have all kinds of laws. The Constitution is being broken daily under Trump. Who's going to enforce Mayor Johnson's the executive order he put forth last week or the week before? We can try to um, do what's right and say put down guidelines, but what's going to force them to follow those guidelines? So people have to be afraid because they see what's going on. You watched the memorial service to Charlie Kirk.
Mhm.
We had Democrats and Republicans who voted to honor this man who was very racist and who said so many hateful things about so many groups of people, but our Congress passed an ordinance or proclamation or whatever you want to say to give this man recognition and to honor him, not something saying that gun violence is wrong and let's stand up for all the victims of gun violence, but this one man who was preaching hate. That's the type of country we have right now. So I'm sure a lot of people, parents and students, are feeling pretty frightened right now.
Mm. I want to hear what your thoughts are, everybody, because I think, you know, he's about to get the Presidential Medal of Freedom awarded posthumously, and it really is about. I think when you look at all that was made of his life, because it wasn't his death as much as it was his life. Um, Pastor Hatch, what's fascinating is that people are losing their jobs for quoting him. You say, I mourn his death, but let me tell you what he said. Karen Ataya, the only black person on the editorial board of the Washington Post, was fired without due process, right? Daryl Jones? She just looked up and she was fired from her job for listing what he said. What he said. And they're making him a Christian. Hold on to that thought. I'm gonna come back to you because I need you to explain them putting him in the shroud of Jesus. I need you to help me to understand that. And I'm going to sit back to back because you're a preaching machine and you're a theologian and a professor. So get ready, everybody. But first, Dr. LaShawn Latrice, you are a community psychologist. What kind of impact does this this sweep have on the community?
Good evening. I am noticing so much that's going on around us. I'm noticing the fear. I'm noticing the just the whole aura of our communities have changed based on people thinking that something can happen to them if they walk out their doors. So it's like you all said, many people are not leaving out their homes. That's one thing. They're certainly not going to send their children to school, and then these situations that are happening where a lot of illegal steps are being taken, people don't feel like they have any real recourse because they feel like we're dealing with a situation where our president has kind of overwritten a lot of things that normally would not go outside of the realm of the law. So this has created an exacerbated effect of trauma that's continuously going to impact people across the board, and not just people who ICE can attack. Think about all of the individuals who are falsely taken into custody, and they're citizens, or if they look a certain way. It's so stereotypical that it doesn't even make any logical sense. And even when I talk to people and they support it, oh, it should be okay for them to do this, and it should be okay for them to come into the communities and go over if someone should be here legally or not. I'm asking them, what if you happen to be a person that is lighter and your skin tone may look a certain way? You might be mixed, but people don't realize it. They don't realize this could happen to any one of us at any given time. The college campuses are in fear. Many of the students, my daughter's a student at Loyola, they're walking around in fear. We have students out here in Chicago Heights at Prairie State. That is a public institution. ICE has been out there all weekend. They have been in the communities, and they plan to go to the schools on tomorrow. And so there's a huge fear that's over that as well, because they have a lot of undocumented people at that university. So it's just, it's insane what's going on. I can't believe it. It's almost like we're living a movie right now.
Yeah, and Dr. Latrice, don't leave out the churches, right? Because they're going to the churches as well.
What do you mean? Explain.
So, meaning that there are no limits. There are no places off limits as to where the ICE can go to seize people. And so, if they're looking for, and if they're looking for Latinos in particular, they're going to go to a church that they know is particularly a heavily Latino church and be there, whether they're inside or outside of the church. There are no limits that are on them. You know, just because it's a sanctuary or a place of worship does not mean they can't go in there to seize people. That's open to them. There are no limits on ICE and what they're doing. And that's, I think, is part of what we're hearing from everyone with regards to the community's concern. You know, I recently heard of a situation here locally in Maryland where a young Latino guy got into an automobile accident, right? Ordinarily, you get in an automobile accident, okay, call the police, go. He got into the automobile accident and he ran into someone. No one was injured or anything along those lines. He was near tears because they did not want the police to be called because of the fear of what would happen. The fear of what would happen. And that's, I think, is a part of, you know, the lady that he struck felt so bad for him. That is, you know, he went, well, I'll pay you whatever I need to pay you to take care of you and your car and everything else. But let's not get the police involved in this. The fear was of being deported. The fear was of being detained. Whether or not he was documented or undocumented, it doesn't make a difference with ICE, because once they can get you and detain you, they can then say, prove what you are, that you're supposed to be here at a later. But at that point, you're already detained. You're going to be held someplace. That's the fear that's there, Santita, and that's what communities are going through.
And you're fearful because I'm sure you don't, number one, you want to make it out of the encounter alive. But where are they taking you?
Right.
Exactly.
If you have children, no one, where are these children going? How many children have been disappeared through this whole process? The parents have been separated from their children. And in this age in which we now see that sex trafficking of children is far more prevalent than we have wanted to know.
Mhm.
I mean, Pastor Hatch, I have not wanted to even believe that people treat children this way. I mean, because it's not in my worldview, but it's far more prevalent than we know. And I, what does this say about us? Because I saw this young man, 31 years of age. No one should be killed. No one should be murdered. Nobody. And it was a horrible thing to watch. And and it just made me relive a lot of personal traumas. I have to be honest with you, because I was I was recording a show when I looked and saw that when it was declared that he had been killed. I knew the way that they were handling the story that he had not made it, because I've had to look at assassinations because they've been part of my life, as you well know, Reverend Hatch, all of my life. It's something that I have feared would come upon me. It didn't, but I thank God for that. But they've I mean, it is in this context in which he is protecting an America that never was.
Hmm.
Pastor Hatch, number one, it's an indigenous country. Europeans came in and they brought Africans with them. So we already had three groups already. I mean, and whenever they needed workers, they never reached and got Europeans. They brought Europeans to get jobs. They brought colored people in here to build this country. Let's be clear on that. That's the reality of that. So, I mean, how are we supposed to reconcile how we're treating people, Pastor Hatch? I mean, is this ethical? Is it right? How is this the way we're supposed to treat people, Pastor Hatch?
No, absolutely not. I mean, it is a toxic political culture, and it starts at the top. I mean, you mentioned child trafficking. That's the Epstein case.
Mm-hmm.
That's the elites in this country that have apparently engaged in this kind of vile abuse of children. People keep calling the victims young women. They were not young women.
Mm-mm.
They were girls. They were minors. They were children. And but there's a rot at the top, So if you're talking about just the morality, the immorality of the culture. And again, the Kirk funeral.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting contrast. You had Kirk's widow, who seems sincere enough to some of us,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe a little politically tactical. I don't know, but she forgave the killer. Apparently, she says, and that was interesting. And those of us that are part of the Black faith tradition, that's kind of like almost a Black thing. That's what we do. We take our religion so seriously, and we take our those of us who are Christian, we take Jesus so seriously.
Oh yeah.
But the president came up right behind her and said that's not his value system at all. He goes after his enemies. And it was unapologetic. And it just shows you, I think, that, the rot is at the top.
But Pastor, wait a minute.
Yeah.
When he said that, the crowd was not appalled.
No.
They were turning this into church. It was evangelical. Oh, he's bringing us back to Jesus. He's bringing us to Christ.
No.
And then when he said this, people were excited. Explain that to me. Make that make sense.
It's cultural Christianity. So it's not Jesus of Nazareth. When Howard Thurman writes his book, Jesus and the Disinherited, his project as an African American was to go back and connect with Jesus of Nazareth without the baggage of Europe, without the baggage of European Christianity. So what you heard in the Kirk service was not necessarily Jesus of Nazareth. It was the Western tradition, meaning the white supremacist tradition, the repackaging of some of the doctrinal stuff, that where America really becomes the white peasants of Europe promised land. That is the American vision, the manifest destiny, is that those that came from the bottom of Europe found their promised land here. And when they came to America, you had a permanent cast of blackness where the bottom was already occupied.
Is that shaping this moment that we're in?
Absolutely. That's what is just what you're looking at when it's the Christianity that they're preaching. You know, this is not biblical.
Is that Christianity though?
It's Christianity that creates Europe. Europe is created by the Holy Roman Catholic tradition. And it morphs by the time it gets to America. American immigration policy is used to whiten the country, to control the politics. And so, you know, it was to Europe, send us your yearning, huddled masses, yearning to be free, your tired, huddled masses. It was to bring the white peasants from the landless peasants from Europe to America. And they became white when they came here. And that is literally the gospel that of white evangelicalism. I mean, it's racism at its core. It's not exactly, it's not really connected entirely to the Jesus of Nazareth in the Bible. Obviously, the value system is totally disconnected.
I just want you to help me with that, because I kept hearing Christian nationalists. I said, is there such a thing? And, you know, even when I hear, a lot of this is just not lining up with me. I mean, the Old Testament is history. The New Testament to me is the mystery, and it's the fulfillment of your faith. So even conflating these, Islam is Islam, Judaism is Judaism, and to be Christianity is Christianity. It's not Judeo-Christianity. It's Christianity. Help me.
Christianities. It's more than one.
Okay.
It's several. It's different versions of it. Like there is Islam. Most of us are going to come from sort of a Black theological tradition. Well, what we really engage in is contextual theology. We see and critique the empire from the bottom up. That's not what was on display at Kurt's memorial service today. That's a whole different interpretation of Jesus. And I'm using the language of Howard Thurman there when he talks about the interpretation of Jesus. It was Jesus and the disinherited. You know, the classic book, the book that Dr. King has in his briefcase and carries everywhere, including on his final trip, you know.
And knowing that he's on the side of the oppressed. I heard none of that today.
That's the way we process that, because that actually is Jesus of Nazareth. You know, I teach in these seminaries, and I love to get the seminarians thinking, because there's a difference between Jesus of Nazareth and Jesus of Norway. You know, there is, and what Thurman does, which is why there's such a resurgence and interest in the goal, and he's obviously very influential when it comes out of African American church tradition, how to interpret, to rediscover who Jesus is without the baggage of Europe. So I've got all of these ecumenical relationships, and when I hear, you know, people talk, my colleagues talk about the Reformation, and it means very little to me. Because the tradition that I come out of basically connects with Jesus of Nazareth as an occupied person on the bottom of the Roman Empire, under the boot of Roman occupation. And the way we read scripture is that God is always at the bottom of empire, at the bottom of empire in Exodus, at the bottom of empire in exile in Babylon and Persia, at the bottom of empire in under Roman occupation in Palestine. And that is the one we identify with. That's who is an Emmanuel, a God with us, that we identify with us in our struggles. None of that you're gonna hear on that stage listening to the Kirk funeral today.
Well, if you look at "Give Me Your Tired, Your Poor," your huddled masses who yearn to breathe free, the wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these your tired tempest tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door. I remember singing that in high school. I used to love singing that. I didn't. That's not how we're treating the people who we're bringing to this country. And wait a minute, we know that at least 38,000 Ukrainians, Attorney Daryl Jones, Renee Criswell, Dr. Latrice, you saw them, and Pastor Hatch, they were brought to Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
No one has mentioned them at all. Now, mind you, I'm not trying to send out a vigilante force after these people. They needed a place to go. But we're not looking at anybody else that way. I mean, and they're not being caught up in these ice sweeps. They're in the little Ukraine, that's a village here in Chicago. And we're not even hearing about them.
And they were given resources when they came here. But President Trump said that he wants people from Europe. He wants people from Sweden. I believe that's the country that he talked about wanting to have immigrants come from. And I guess this might be simplistic, but I always thought that to be Christian was to be Christ-like. And I don't see that coming from President Trump or the people he has surrounding him. And Jesus didn't persecute foreigners, immigrants. He embraced them. So I don't quite know what these people are doing. And I don't know if you guys had seen this right before Trump got inaugurated. There were people passing out flyers. I can't remember if it was in Oklahoma or where it was, saying that they should go to churches, like the attorney said, and go to schools and to grocery store parking lots and get the license plate numbers of people who looked like they might be immigrants. And the sinister thing about this is that they said a lot of their houses would be coming onto the market cheaply. So there's, I guess, an economic attachment to sending these people, who some of them do have homes and they have vehicles. Maybe all these things will go on the market cheaply. That's sinister. I don't know if that's happening, but I know they were passing out flyers about that.
I wanted to say, in addition to what you were saying, Santita brought up a point about when the Ukrainians did come. We talked about this like how long ago? A year ago, maybe over a year. But until you brought that information out and then you sent us some things to read, I had never heard of this situation. But then I started talking to people who were working at places that the Ukrainians were given jobs at. Mm-hmm. So that turned into an array of resources for them that were laid out. Not only were they given housing, but they were also mapped out to jobs in certain communities. And I know several people that witnessed those things happen on their jobs. And so it kind of showed that, okay, so here you have one group of people being treated a certain way. But then when you think about it, just 3 short summers ago, we were housing people, housing migrants in police stations. We were housing them in schools, closed down park districts. And then some of them were grabbed up and given the opportunity to purchase homes. So what world do we live in that all of a sudden there's this entire 180 done? Now everything is opposite. It's almost like you're dealing with 2 different people. So I'm confused as to how we have made this big turn from them taking a certain amount of resources. Because if you all remember, millions upon millions of dollars have been pumped into this, only to do what? To turn around and throw ICE out here and say, okay, now you're going to kick them out. This is so confusing. It almost seems like we're dealing with somebody with a reprobate mind or something. I don't even understand how nobody's even calling this out to say just a few short years ago, we were expending resources out of the, I mean, we were suffering. Just the regular communities were suffering, but there was so much money being pumped in these resources. But I know now it looks like there's some sort of money grab behind the scenes, because when it was serving those self-interests of those people, they supported it. But look how quickly it's shifted. It's unbelievable.
Well, I mean, what do we say? Because a lot of these communities, Daryl, were resourced. They were onboarded into the United States so they could be successful.
Mm-hmm.
That is not what's happening to the Eritreans, to the Haitians, to the Mexican Americans, to the Guatemalans, to the Venezuelans. That's not happening for them. But visa overstays, you can be Canadian, you can stay as long as you wish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean that's I think that's part of what Pastor Hatch was really laying out. I mean, it's part of the white Christian nationalist philosophy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that if you're white, you're going to be treated differently. That your white Christian nationality is different than any other part of the Christian faith that exists. You're treated differently, and that's a prime example of it. How they treat the Ukrainians as opposed to how they're treating the folks that are in Venezuela or from Venezuela or from various other countries. It's based on your race. Yeah, I mean, this isn't a difficult pull, right? It's based. We see it all the time. It's based on your race. You're treated differently. These aren't the rules for you to follow. You have the white rules to follow. You get a pass on all of this. You on the other hand, folks, the people of color, you're not going to get this pass. That's the case that I was talking about that just came down from the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court stamped what we're saying right now when they said the police can stop you, the ICE police can stop you simply because you look Latino, simply because you have an accent, simply because you're standing by a Home Depot or Lowe's and you're going to be a day laborer. That's the basis to go and detain you and to force you to say that you're in this country legally. That's the basis for them to search you, because when they stop you, they're going to search you. So, it's all one. It's all one. They didn't say that you could do that based on being white. No. But you can do it based on being Latino, and you're going to find it soon based on being black, based on being all of these other factors are going to lay in there. That's that white Christian nationalism that underlies that complete philosophy.
Oh, do I need to carry ID every time I go outside or have it accessible at home?
Probably.
No, I mean, because, Pastor Hatch, I'm thinking passbooks, Attorney Jones. That's what I'm thinking, because, Dave Gowling made the point. He said, Santita, I hope you don't have a traffic stop. That's not funny.
But that's precisely what's happening, Santita.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's precisely what's happening. On our show, we just had a young guy, one of the political people that's out there registering people to vote, who is of Latino heritage. What they're doing in Florida right now is that they're advising folks of Latino heritage to have your identity with you, to have your passport with you, to have your documents with you, to walk around with your documents when you're in the community in case you get stopped by ICE. That's where we are right now. I never thought in the United States of America I would have to have my identity. I would have to have my identification on me in case I got stopped, for me to produce my papers to show that I am who I say I am and I belong here. That's just incredible. But that's where we are.
Yeah, I mean, but I'm wondering if we really understand that, because if Pastor Hatch, Dr. Latrice, Renee Criswell, Attorney Daryl Jones, if 20% of the migrants in Chicago are Black, and I hear a lot of the Black people who are part of the Morning Stars, the Santita Jackson Morning Stars, they say, I'm tired of us fighting for everybody else. I'm like, but honey, you are everybody else now, Pastor Hatch.
Mhm.
Because everybody looks like they're from everywhere.
Right.
Yeah, I really, we really need an internal dialogue about, our own values on this, because
Mm.
I don't know anybody. I don't know if anybody should think that what is happening to Latinos and others is the end game. They're not the end game. We're the end game. And when you hear the issue of crime, it means all this diminishment of rights, all of this racial profiling that is now allowable, that the Supreme Court has endorsed. All of that is going to be used against us. And who do you think the police support?
Right.
I'm not talking about ICE. I'm talking about the law enforcement personnel in Chicago's and other cities like it. Those are the most Republican organizations in the body politic in Chicago.
Yeah.
You have a blue city, but the police department is red.
They were January 6th. Many of them were.
They live in the most Republican wards in the city.
And didn't they give Trump a standing ovation when he came the first time he was running, and gave Johnson a vote of no confidence for not showing up when Trump came?
But you know what? Look, you had a Democratic mayor who said shoot to kill, Richard Daley.
Well, he was
So-
racist too. He was very racist.
Yeah, but and it's also, I'm looking at who submits and who doesn't.
Mhm.
And I think we've got to look at this very broadly, because white people who stand up pay a price.
Mhm.
So I'm not denying the impacts of anti-Black racism at all. But I think of Bill Kunstler, who you would remember, Pastor Hatch, and you would remember him, Attorney Jones, out of New York, Renee Criswell. He was a great freedom fighter,
Mhm.
and he lived under harassment from the state his whole professional life. I remember when then Congressman Dennis Kucinich, when he was running for president, he said, I want a Department of Peace. People laughed at him.
Yeah.
I also remember when he was on the same stage as Barack Obama and Senator Clinton, both Senators Clinton and Obama. They were running for president, and they asked who supports reparations. He was the only one on the stage who said yes without reservation. He was the only one. That was it. So, I mean, I'm wondering just where all of this, I only have about 4 or 5 minutes left here. Help me to understand where all of this is going, because I've got a Christian martyr, if you will, on one hand, Pastor Hatch, and all that means. And yet I'm seeing things that are to me, so obviously unchristian in our behavior, Pastor Hatch. And I don't understand what we're doing here, because they have taken an opportunity to wrap him in a shroud and in a flag. And I'm looking at how we're treating these people. We're separating parents from their children. And I don't know about you, but when I was accustomed to my father going away, but I was not always happy about that. But I understood that's how he made his living. But when my mother went away, it was like the soul was taken out the house. I can't imagine if you're out with your parents and the police pull them out the car and they leave you there by yourself. That is horrifying.
Yes.
How can you say that you're pro-family and that you are a Bible-thumping Christian and everybody should marry and have lots of babies? I heard that several times during this memorial today.
White babies.
Yeah, but okay, well then maybe that's it. I'm going to go around. Pastor Hatch, I want you to close us out. But I want to start with you, Renee. Give us a word. What do you want us to look out for? Because I'm going to have Attorney Tanya Woods back on tomorrow to talk about our rights. I'm going to reach out to you, Attorney Jones, to see if you can join us because they have these palm cards, and I'm going to send you a copy of them. I'm going to send it to you, Pastor Hatch, too, because you should probably print them out and distribute them at your church because I think they're useful for those of us as we just move around from day to day, whether you're a migrant or not. Because when you get pulled over by the police or when you're detained, it is unsettling. And now they're sending people, whether you are a citizen or not, they're sending you to parts unknown. Renee Criswell?
First, let me thank you for inviting me to be on the panel.
Oh,
Uh, I want to say that recently Eric Smith, the representative from Missouri, said that this is a white country built by white people for white people. I want people to look out for shows like yours because you give us information on what we can do to help in these dark times. I learned something new from you this morning when you had the lawyer from the West Side Justice Center.
yes.
I gave them a donation. I thank you for all the information that you give. And we have to just be vigilant and we have to be aware by joining groups like you've said, joining organizations where we can fight together because there is a fight that's coming up. And we are the targets for these people who
Oh,
want to
yeah.
have this white country, like Stephen Miller has said many times.
Well, he said it today.
Oh, really? I'm
Oh,
not surprised.
he said, it was unsettling, Dr. Latrice, because I didn't hear a lot of love up there for people. And quite honestly, it made me very sad because I said, this is not going to end well for everybody, not just for me. This won't, you can't mistreat people and you can't treat people this way and think you're going to be blessed. We're not going to have healthy communities. Dr. Latrice, what do you want us to know in this moment?
I just want to say I had never heard of Mark Kirk until the issue happened. Someone in my house told me about it right before it became public news. I was flabbergasted by a lot of the talks, the conversations, the meetings. What caught my attention the most was the amount of pastors, men of God, that took the scriptural part of what he was adding to his systemic racist message. And they thought that it was something that was enlightening. It was insane. But everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I'm saying that, but I also am also saying that we must realize that when we're in this social justice world, this social justice movement, there are people who have detached themselves away from Jesus because of the Christian nationalism message that has existed for decades and decades. But the other side of the coin is when you see something publicized like this funeral on this level, it further enhances people's ability to push certain things away because they associate Christianity with control, with white power, with, just the whole concept of what that whole system stands for. And when I heard Pastor Hatch talking and even Attorney Daryl Jones talking, they're able to separate it of their knowledge of the Bible, right? But there's a group of people who don't know that. So I admonish you all to just keep pushing the messages out there for people to understand that there is a difference between Jesus of Nazareth and the Jesus that people are using to kill people in the name of Jesus. It's been going on for so long that certain people think I can't attach myself to Christianity because it looks like that over there and it's mean and it's evil. But the way that you all broke it down, people need to hear that more often. And so whenever I get an opportunity to, I just had this conversation with two people 2 days ago. And people were just basically saying, you and that Christianity, you heard that Mark Kirk Kirk guy quoting the Bible, and I'm like, nah, you got to listen. You got to pay attention to everything, not
Mhm.
just word, because the enemy knows how to come in and use that word the wrong way and kind of throw it out there to do what he was doing. And he was on a distinct mission. And once I studied a lot of his tapes, I see where he really came from, and I see who backed him.
Well, you know, every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, you can go to WOLDC, WOL in DC, and hear this magnificent radio show with attorney Barbara Arnwine and attorney Daryl Jones. Attorney Jones, we have a lot on our plates. We have a lot before us. I know we can make it. What would you advise people to do in this moment?
Well, Santita, you know, there's a saying that I've been lifting up because it's more appropriate now than ever. And that is that a closed mouth doesn't get fed. And right now, if you want democracy to survive, if you want your rights to be protected, you have got to open your mouth and speak up. You've got to stand up. You know, hats off to Governor Pritzker. Hats off to Mayor Johnson for willing to stand up and say, no, I dissent. I won't. No, I will not comply. No. We've got to be certain that we're all doing that we're all, however, whatever format that you're comfortable in doing it, whether it's in writing, by email, by phone calls, or getting in the streets and just getting in the way to protect your rights and everyone's rights. Now it's time to do that. And most of all, Santita, and I want to close on this, most of all, right now is the time to check on your voter right and your voting registration status, because right now is the time that the 2026 election is beginning. The campaign is kicking off. And right now we have a Congress that does not have guardrails to bring the president in line. And the Supreme Court has already shown that they won't do it. So it's going to be on us, the voters, to be able to put people in Congress that can serve as those guardrails to hold him accountable, to have investigations done appropriately, to make the changes that we need to see occur. So I certainly implore upon everyone, Santita, to check on your voter registration status, check on your family's registration status, and get involved in your community.
Amen. I literally have 90 seconds for you, Pastor Hatch, but I know you can do it. Give us a word. Lift us up.
No, just co-signing what Attorney Daryl just said. You know, we need to focus on the midterms. I want to say that the funeral propaganda, it was very effective, and it's going to be very effective as it's looped. And I don't see the same kind of strategic, broad thinking coming from another side to the MAGA movement that has some divisions in it. And so I can't help but think, well, we really miss your dad's voice and energy in this season, who could convene, you know, people to focus on the midterms, because we got 1 year to go, and all the energy should be used as a continuous dynamic of organizing people, you know, for a crescendo. If there's not a counterbalance in one of the houses of Congress by next year, it's gonna get even worse. So we really need to buckle up and continue to organize.
Amen, amen, and amen. Because you know what? There is a way out of this. Uh, Reverend says, vote about it. If you don't vote, you have already given them your answer. Did you know that 90 million of us did not vote in the last presidential election? 90 million. So my brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, said, look, nobody won. It was a draw. The people who didn't vote outnumbered the people who voted. Come on now. So we've got to look, if we want this country to work, we're gonna have to work the country. What did Pastor Johnny Coleman say? It works when you work it. Yeah, this country can work when we decide to make it work. It's not gonna run on its own. Somebody's gonna run it. It needs to be you and not the oligarchs. I am Santita Jackson, AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. God bless.